Before I introduce General Morrison, I look at the times that we're in right now, and I'm reminded of I've told the story before, so bear with me, but I'm reminded of a story that General Krulak, former Commandant of the Marine Corps, used to talk about the changing environment we're in. In the year 9 AD, Quintus Verus, the Roman proconsul, left the gates of Rome and headed up into eastern Germany to take on the tribes that were up there. The barbarian tribes were up there that have been causing the Roman Empire some problems. And 2 years earlier, a group had gone up there and summarily defeated the barbarians, the Teutonic warriors that were up there. This time, Verus went up there and engaged the Teutonic warriors, but things were a little bit different. They were suckered and lured into the swamps and the high ground. Rather than fighting them on the flat plains and the flat areas that were up there, they were brought into the woods and the swamps that were up there. And the Roman legions, 3 Roman legions, were defeated en masse. And at the end, when it was all over, Quintus Verus' head was on a pike. And the Roman Emperor Augustus was said to say, "Necra, necra, necra." Not the same, not the same, not the same. And that's kind of the environment that we're moving into now as we look at cyber integrated with the other combat arms, the other kinetic forms of warfare that we have to deal with going forward. In some ways, it's back to the future, things that some of us grew up with, understanding electronic warfare, integrating that, setting up our radios so that they were going parallel to the FLOT so that we wouldn't be jammed. But a lot of things have changed as well. It's not the same. We've seen China as recently as 10 years, as distantly as 10 years ago, demonstrate they had a capability to take down satellites. We've seen a lot of the other, we've had a great opportunity to watch what the Russians are doing, to see what they've been doing in Ukraine, using electronic warfare and indiscriminate mass artillery strikes. Little green men popping up and showing up. So in some ways, it's the same, but in other ways, it's not the same. We've got a lot of lessons to relearn, but that's really more complex, this environment that our young men and women that we task to go to war and defend our country have to engage in. It's much more complex than it was in the past. And I don't know anyone better able to address that topic here than our guest speaker this morning. And so I'd now like to introduce TechNet's opening keynote speaker, the Commanding General of the Cyber Center of Excellence here at Fort Gordon, General John Morrison. General Morrison assumed duties as Commanding General in August of 2016, excuse me, a year ago, just shortly after last year's TechNet concluded. So he and his team have been instrumental since day one of building this year's event. They've been great partners, and John has had, has had a strong hand on this as we've gone forward. He was commissioned out of James Madison. His previous commands include the Commanding General of 7th Signal Command here at Fort Gordon and the Commanding General of NETCOM at Fort Huachuca. I'd like to personally thank General Morrison for his support of FCO over the years. Thank you very much, John, not only here in Augusta, but in your previous roles in the Army CIO G6 office and as the Army G3, G5, and G7. I think I speak for all of us when I say that we appreciate the vision that you're providing, the leadership that you're providing to this community, and the commitment to the continuation of Augusta's role as the Army center hub. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Major General John Morrison.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? So usually I don't let anybody get all the way through my bio because how many people are really interested in any of that? But I didn't have any gumption at all to interrupt Lieutenant General Shea. I've known General Shea for a long, long time, and I know that going up against General Shea and trying to interrupt him would probably be a bad move on my part. I'm going to stay down here because I like to walk around and what I really want to do today is have a conversation. And I'll give you some of the things of what's happened over the last year, because what a difference a year makes. But what I really want to do is answer some questions and get the dialogue going back and forth between us, because events like these are absolutely critical. And so I'd like to start by saying thank you very much to AFCEA, General Shea, General Wood, absolutely superb partnership, and you're right, we are 20% bigger than we were last year. We are busting at the seams as I look out into the audience. I'd also like to thank all of our industry partners for coming today, because Bill, good to see you, because our industry partners are absolutely critical as we get ready to move forward, especially in cyberspace. If there's any place where we need public-private partnerships, it is in the cyber domain. It changes too quickly, and quite frankly, from the defensive perspective and the security perspective, we all have the same problems. So forums like this where we can share ideas and really have that intellectual discussion is absolutely key. So what a difference a year makes. If you had talked to us last year, we were training basically lieutenants in the cyber school. Today, we're training all 3 cohorts, officers, warrant officers, and this afternoon we graduate our first enlisted course. Absolutely tremendous growth led by the cyber school team. What a difference a year makes. We're fundamentally changing the way that we train inside the signal school, making it much more multidisciplined and less specialized. And quite frankly, upping the game of the signal regiment so they can do not only the operations and maintenance of the network, but the security of it as well. Foundational change that is being implemented by Robert Edmondson and the team over in the Signal School that is already on that glide slope. What a difference a year makes. The decision that we're going to go ahead and move our electronic warfare professionals and move them into the cyber branch. And while that's effective in October of next year, that transition actually starts now. And we will start training our electronic warfare professionals in cyber operations planning starting in January. And then what a year a difference makes. What a difference a year makes. Hey, quit laughing at me. Slide, please. We've also now, slide, please. I'm trying to get the slide up so you don't have to look at my melon head. There we go. What a difference a year makes. We now have our first doctrine for fighting in cyberspace and electronic warfare and the operations that are supporting it. Now, it goes back to what General Shea was saying. Some of this, it's about relearning old lessons. But I would submit to you, it's a fool's errand if we think this is back to the future, especially when it comes to electronic warfare. So this doctrine codifies how we are going to operate in cyberspace. And it wraps in electronic warfare. And I'll leave you with 3 big points that what makes this doctrine different. First off, for the very first time, it says that DoDN operations is the foundation for cyberspace operations. DoDN operations is the foundation for cyberspace operations. That intrinsically means that the signal regiment is inextricably linked to what's happening in cyberspace. There is no separation. The other key component of it is that it establishes the network end-to-end, strategic to tactical. There is no differentiation between the two, because in cyberspace, it's ubiquitous. It codifies how we're going to organize ourselves from an offensive cyber perspective, and then balances that with DCO responsive actions, those defensive actions we take in gray space to prevent an attack, and brings those two together. It brings electronic warfare, all 3 aspects of it, into cyberspace operations: electronic protect, electronic attack, and electronic support. All 3 are brought into cyberspace operations. And then it talks about how we will execute integrated operations that we are calling SEMA. cyber electromagnetic activities. It bounds all three of these core competencies, signal, cyber, and electronic warfare, with the right intelligence underpinnings and brings them into an integrated staff in planning in support of the commander's operational scheme and maneuver. You heard General Shea mention that before. How do you balance bringing non-kinetic effects, balance them with kinetic effects to achieve what the maneuver commander wants to do on the battlefield? And this is more than just a staff planning construct. It is an operational construct that goes all the way from the battalion up to the theater army level. This doctrine is foundational. It's already having some second-order effects on things that we're doing. For example, I talked about, for the first time, we're codifying that it's bringing the network end-to-end, bringing it all together. Well, now that's how the Army's going to be managing our money when it comes to the network. Looking at it from a complete portfolio, enterprise, strategic, all the way down to tactical. Because it is one network, and quite frankly, its weakest link is where the enemy's going to try and find that hole and go. So significant change in how we're doing business. This will be mentioned pretty consistently in the new FM 3.0 that's getting ready to come out, which is the Army's capstone doctrine for how we fight unified land operations. So we're organizing around this, but this is just the start. This describes how the Army will fight in cyberspace. This describes how we want to start organizing our staff sections in cyberspace, but nesting it under existing processes. So, for example, there is not a SEMA targeting process. There's one targeting process. But SEMA feeds into that targeting process so that the commander can synchronize kinetic and non-kinetic fires. The other thing this is key is it's all about integration. Now, cyberspace, if we stood up the cyber branch and we've really started working our way through what we want to do as an Army in cyber, we took probably the hardest road you could possibly take. We decided we were going to stand up a branch as opposed to just sitting there saying, MI, cyber's your mission, signal, it's your mission, or picking somebody. We decided we were going to stand up a branch. And all the culture challenges that comes with it, all the turf wars that come with it. If you buy into SEMA, this is all about integrating and everybody bringing their core competencies to the table to support one person, the maneuver commander. So it is about bringing it in there, and it's going to force us to start thinking differently. So we're now starting to do it from a doctrinal perspective. We've got an effort on board to where we will actually stand up SEMA sections inside each one of our operational formations, where we bring the various tribes together so they can collaborate and operate in an integrated fashion. We got two other big pieces we've got to get after, because that's just the staff component of it. One is organization, and then two is capabilities. I'm going to talk about the latter one first, because that's the one that we almost always gravitate towards, and that's that materiel solution that we want to put in the hands of our soldiers. And so what we are working very hard on is making sure that we develop integrated requirements. And I'll give you the anecdote. You had the Intel Center that was on the path where they were developing their own SIGINT capability. You had us on the cyber side going down the same road to developing our own electronic warfare capabilities. When you did the overlap between the two, it was about a 90% hit rate on commonality of requirements. And so we were getting ready to do it to ourselves again. Two different requirements documents hitting the building, which would have resulted in two different programs of record, probably developed by two different people, and then we would have put that back out into the field and put an integration burden onto operational units. Exactly what we don't want to do. Exactly where we need industry's help. Exactly where we need industry's help. So now we're writing one requirements document, and this isn't going to be the mother of all documents. This is not going down the future combat systems route. But this is bringing together the two communities and writing one requirements document with industry feedback so that we can put one thing into the building and do this in a smart way with the intent of getting an integrated capability out on the back end. Because in cyberspace, whether it is DODIN, DCO, OCO, it's all got to be wrapped together with the right intelligence underpinnings. Because if you don't have intelligence in cyberspace, you're not effective. It's that simple. And so I got to beat that last point pretty hard. We need industry's help making sure that we get integrated capabilities out into the force that are simple and intuitive, that can be operated by soldiers. And one-offs that are overly complex that we've got to try and bolt on to this architecture is not something that we're very interested in. And we need industry's help to get us there. The other component of it that we are now starting to work our way through is we've got to come up with an integrated formation that's actually going to start executing SEMA. SEMA is written into doctrine. It's really staff operational planning, feeding commanders' processes. But there's a second component of it. We know that as we came out of 15 years, excuse me, we're still in it, but we divested ourselves of our electronic warfare capability for all the right reasons. I mean, it was a counter-IED fight, and we had to focus our efforts there. But we need to regrow that capacity, because I would submit to you, when it comes to electronic warfare, we are outgunned. On cyber, I'm very comfortable. On the network, I'm very comfortable. But when it comes to electronic warfare capabilities, we are plain outgunned by peer and near-peer competitors. And so building these integrated formations, not a signal company over here, an MI company over here, an electronic warfare company over here, an integrated formation where we can bring it together and really start getting after the basic tenets of multi-domain battle in a fused, synchronized, and integrated fashion is something our Army really has to start getting after. Now, we've got several pilots that we are starting to kick off. One is out with USERPAC out in the Pacific, where we will learn by doing, experiment, figure out what that force structure should really look like. What are the capabilities we really want to put into these formations? How do we leverage reach back from the cyber folks that are here at Fort Gordon or up at Fort Meade, as opposed to trying to put cyber folks into every formation, a bill we simply cannot afford as an Army? And then we'll continue to work with the building to see if we're going to actually stand something up here inside CONUS for subsequent deployment to one of the theaters of operation. But this is all, if you buy into SEMA at all, it is all about integrated operations in support of the maneuver commander's operational scheme. That is what it is all about. And I can tell you, as I go around and you talk to the various tribes, in all candor, some people are nervous about what I'm talking about. I don't know why. You know, what's interesting to me is it's usually the old guys like me that are a little bit more concerned about it. It's not really the young ones. They seem to clearly understand what it is we're trying to get accomplished. Everybody has a day job. It's about everybody bringing their core competencies to the table so we can support that commander who's trying to get something done for the nation. That makes sense to everybody? So I'm going to stop there, and hopefully there's a bunch of questions, and we can go whichever way you want on it, because we've got a lot going on.
Sir, this is John Rutt. I'm back here to your right.
John, you're not allowed to ask questions.
Yeah. Well, I'm not asking them, sir. They're coming in via email. So the first question we have is, the acquisition process is not responsive enough to keep pace with technology. What changes, if any, are being addressed to reduce the acquisition timeline? And is there any effort to build communication platforms to become scalable to adjust to mission requirements?
So I'll do the last one first, and then I'll back my way into the acquisition piece, because I think that is asked at every forum I've ever been at where we do these kind of engagements. On the scalable piece, the answer is yes. And so for the last year, we've been conducting a pilot to figure out what does our force structure need to look like from a signal perspective at our division and below formations. One of the COAs was establish a provisional signal battalion. That was done down at 3rd ID. The other one was out at 4th ID at Fort Carson, and that was to bump up the G6 and the S6 shops to see if just by increasing the manning, we could get after some of the training and maintenance challenges we were having inside those formations. But the real interesting one was COA 3. And this one was directed by the chief. And it was, I want to see what a JCSE, Joint Communication Support Element, like model would look like, and is there value added in the Army evaluating it? And so we've worked very hard with Todd Isaacson and the ForceCom team, and we're going to actually execute a pilot like that in September. And that's all based off of scalable command posts, and we're going to ramp it up from 2 packs going in up to initial, and then all the way up to the full load, right? And so that'll get executed, and we've gotten some great support from JCSC as they've helped us do this, because we're going to use Army soldiers to do it as opposed to using the element to do it. And they're the pros from Dover. What we want to make sure is that if we put this kit, the proper kit, in the hands of soldiers with the right training, are they capable of doing scalable communications? And so we'll see where it goes. But I think if that pilot is as successful as Todd Isaacson says it's going to be, I think it can fundamentally change the structure of our expeditionary signal battalions. And the model that we showed to General Perkins at the TRADOC Commanders Forum last week really was, here's the ESV of today, 468 packs, 30 points of presence you can support. Drop that down by 100, you actually support 45 points of presence. It's just a different equipping and manning model. And so a lot of excitement about how this pilot's going to go, and we will learn by doing. Going back to the acquisition piece, there's all sorts of work ongoing right now to figure out what is the right way forward from an acquisition perspective in cyberspace. There's actually been some pretty positive movement on it. The AAE recently delegated some acquisition authorities down to the deputy at Army Cyber, so we can spin things a little bit quicker. They're limited, they're nascent, but it's still there. We are getting ready to bring in capabilities that will be using an IT box construct, so we can go after capability drops as opposed to monolithic PORs that take us 5, 6, 7 years to field. It is a completely different construct. For the network itself, we are trying to work our way through that. But what I will tell you is that what's going to pop out the back end is not going to be what we're doing today. We know intuitively in this space that if you try and establish a program of record and think in the IT environment, I'm not even going to say the network, in the IT environment, if you think you're going to be fielding that program of record for 15, 20 years, it's a fool's errand. And so there's going to be a different construct that pops out the back end of this. And like I said, I haven't said it yet, and it is something that the Chief of Staff of the Army is personally touching. And he hasn't made a final decision yet, but to sit there and say that the senior leaders of the Army are driving on getting after how do we do things better and smarter, it's an understatement. Personally involved. I hope that helped, John.
Well, sir. Next question is, please describe how you want to receive industry feedback on SEMA capabilities.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that we want that to happen. From a center of excellence ways, do we have, where are our TICMs? Are they in here?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So first off, from a cyber center of excellence perspective, I'd encourage industry to reach out to our TRADOC capability managers. We want your feedback, and they are the ones that are responsible for providing requirements going into the building. What I will tell you that we are working our way through, and I wish I had more specifics now, but I don't, is we want to have an industry day, especially when it comes to cyberspace and electronic warfare, and it's really a discussion. Here's what we're thinking. Here's what we think the requirements may be so that we can get an azimuth check. Are we gold plating something? Are we asking for something that's just plain unrealistic? Are we not asking for something we just plain haven't thought of? And we're trying to work that for a little bit later in the fall so that we can get industry ideas to come in because we need them. And we don't have any pride in authorship on requirements. We can give it to you operationally. What has happened with us traditionally with requirements is we've gone way too far to the right on writing technical requirements. And where we want to focus is on what's the operational requirement. You guys help us with what that technical implementation should be, as long as it's in an integrated fashion. I can't stress that enough. No more bolt-ons. Everybody got that one? Okay.
Okay, sir, the next question. What would you like to see academia do for you? What would you best like to see from our graduates?
I'm not sure I understand the second part, John.
What would you like to see academia do for the cyber community?
Yeah, so you saw General Shape throw up a chart that talks about the forum that FC is going to host really on our behalf in the January timeframe. Academia is very important in this. What are things from a cyber school, signal school perspective that I would really like to see? Boy, I would really like to start seeing instructor and professor changes. Whoever's got the latest and greatest, they come on over and they teach a course, data analytics, big data, how to fuse that kind of stuff. Academia could really help us with that. On the flip side, we can really help down at Augusta University or one of the other universities that we have an MOA with where, quite frankly, we've got folks that do this every single day. They can come down and give operational perspectives so that as students are working their way through a problem, we can have that exchange of ideas. I would really like to start seeing some sort of consortium where really best practices from across the cyber community, and I mean that writ large, DoD, public, private, where academia was really helping us filter through what those components are going to be so that we can hone in on the right things. Because quite frankly, when you look at all the information that's being put out in this domain, it can almost be overwhelming. Academia can help us with that.
Okay, sir, next question. You mentioned integrated cyber operations within the Army. How is the Army integrating their cyber operations with the rest of the DoD?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. But what I would tell you is this is one area where the Department of Defense got it right. You know, so when you think about it, the network, you know, what the signal regiment does is inherently joint. What the intel community does is inherently joint. What you do in cyberspace is inherently joint. And so as we built the cyber mission force, this wasn't built service-centric. It was built from a joint construct from the very, very beginning. Everybody trained to the same standards. Quite frankly, until the advent of the cyber school, it was all being trained by the joint community. You had to go through the joint pipeline to pop out the back end and be certified. And so when you take a look at General Nakasoni's force that he has inside our cyber, the vast majority of his teams are working for other joint commanders. And they're all trained to the same standards, and they, quite frankly, the vast majority of them have the same TTPs with some slight nuances, which I would submit to you are good, because it allows for innovation down at the team level. But I think this is one where we've actually got it right, and it's continuing to mature. Now, you've got a new construct coming in called the Cyber School. And what we are working now with Cybercom is how do you do cyber training and what is the best methodology? The Army is the only service right now that is putting a significant investment into infrastructure specifically for training. World-class training in world-class facilities to train the world's best operators. Almost $1 billion the Army is committed to spending to get the entire COE in state-of-the-art facilities. So working with that is a unique opportunity that we briefed Admiral Rogers on a couple weeks back of, we're putting all this money into infrastructure. You're assigning us to have the lead for the curriculum development. Matter of fact, we're actually developing some of it, which is now becoming the joint standard. There's a unique opportunity for the Department of Defense to go ahead and converge on one place and have one executive agent for training. And quite frankly, we already do it. We do it for satellites over in the Signal School, where, quite frankly, if you go over there, it's a joint facility. We even have Marines, sir.
Okay, sir, next question. Could you discuss the advancement of collective training of cyber capabilities at the CTCs?
Yeah, so we teaming with Army Cyber have conducted 8 different rotations where we have done SEMA support, core and below, but they're pilots. And so what we're working through now is, what is it we really want to have down at a brigade combat team? What are those tasks for cyberspace operations that we want that BCT really trained on? To date, what it has been is we push a plug forward to the BCT, and then we figure out how it would then be integrated into BCT operations. From an electronic warfare perspective, I think there's merit to that approach. From a defensive cyber operations perspective and from an offensive cyber perspective, I'm not so sure. Because there's much more of a reliance on reach back in how we will actually be executing those kind of operations. And during our last CTC rotation, we actually did reach back operations where the rotation, both defensively and offensively, was supported from right here at Fort Gordon. So it's helping us learn and shape our thinking. We've got to figure out what's got to be organic to the BCT. I think it'll be electronic warfare. Now, these won't be the electronic warfare professionals of today. They'll be the ones that we transform into cyber operational planners. So that'll be that cyber presence that is on the battle staff. And then we've got to up the game of our 255 Sierras and our 25 Deltas and grow that capacity, because they're really going to be the terrain owners inside that BCT formation. And then the rest of the con ops is going to be reach back. That answer your question, John?
Yes, sir. Next question.
You're really not sure, are you?
Sir, they're not my questions, but I like your answers. Cool. So the next question is, the press has reported...
See me after class, John.
Yes, sir. So the press has reported that the Army will conduct a direct commission program for the cyber branch. If so, can you describe the type of officers you need?
Yeah, so that is a great question. So Congress has directed all of the services to conduct a pilot. We have it working back up through the Secretary of the Army for approval on the concept for implementation of the direct commissioning pilot. What we are focusing inside that pilot is not skills that we can produce. We already have the cyber school that can produce some really great cyber operators, but we can't produce everything. So we're really looking for those skill sets where somebody can bring something to the table that will help us fill an immediate operational gap. We talked about big data analytics. Data scientists are not something that the Army has on the shelf today. Right? So that is a skill set that might be perfect for this. Tool developers, folks that can go down into their basement late at night and they can come up with all sorts of funky things that we might be able to use. Funky things is not a doctrinal term, by the way. But things, they can bring that capability in and they've got that right skill set. Those are people that we're looking for. It's going to start off relatively small. We're going to make sure that we've got it right. And then we owe a report back, I think, in the 2021 time frame, back to Congress sitting there saying, do we want to continue it or not?
Okay, sir, the next question. How do we persuade the operational commander to integrate SEMA elements on his staff?
Yeah, so, boy, I'll give you my perspective, and you're really going to hear it in spades from General Funk here in a couple minutes. There's no convincing needed. Right now, our biggest challenge is getting that capacity out there because operational commanders are demanding it now. You know, they want some of it. They want to figure out how do they integrate it into their scheme of maneuver. And then they want people that can speak to them in operational terms. Not in geek speak, because if you do it in geek speak, you're going off to the land of misfit toys. But a few of you actually remember that, huh? Unfortunately, I'm now showing my age. But can speak in operational terms. And I'll tell you, it's something that's being driven from the top as well. So we've established new general officer training, and every incoming two-star commander that now has to go to a course. One of the blocks that is taught to them is SEMA operations. And how do you integrate that into your doing? I personally brief every brigade commander course and walk them through, this is how you're going to integrate it into your scheme of maneuver. Our challenge right now is getting that capacity and then really getting the integration happening down at that level. And I will tell you, it gets driven by commanders. And that's the message I really lead them with. If you leave it to folks that are inside their staff sections, they're going to do business as usual because it's what they're comfortable with. But if you as the commander drive it and you force that level of integration between the branches, you're going to get a completely different operational effect. And so we have now tied that back into some of these SEMA Support Corps and below pilots that we've been running. And we've seen some pretty significant synergy by the commanders that grab it and own it. But our challenge right now is we've got to get capacity out into the field. And quite frankly, folks are starting to come up with their own homegrown solutions just so they have something that they can start integrating into their scheme of maneuver.
So I'm looking for that one final question that's absolutely perfect to end this session. And this is it. Is Jay Cutler the right answer for the Dolphins?
So most people know I'm a Dolphins fan. They have officially broken my heart for 41 years. And I'm just going to sit there and say it'll probably happen earlier this season. That fair enough?
Who, sir?
So just let me leave a couple closing thoughts. And I appreciate all the questions and the dialogue. It's super helpful. It's helpful for me. And hopefully it was beneficial going back out. Integration, integration, integration. This is not back to the future. This is a different way of doing business so that we can operate at speed in a domain that changes all the time. And the ESM and cyber and the network, you can't separate them. They are inextricably linked. And therefore, the folks that operate in that environment, read almost all the green suitors in here, and the folks that support it, read all of our industry partners, need to understand it's got to be about integrated capabilities that allow us to do stuff. And it's got to, I got to bang on it. It's got to be simple. It's got to be intuitive. It's got to be something that a soldier can operate when they are really, really tired and they've been in a long fight. Because the fight we're going to face in the future is not going to be from a FOB. It's not going to be from a combat outpost. The fight we're going to face in the future is going to be against somebody that can punch back, and they can punch back pretty damn hard. And so we need those simple, intuitive, integrated capabilities. And when we're doing something stupid, we need industry to help us out and show us what's in the art of the possible. That's the message I leave you with. My thanks to AFCEA. My thanks to everybody that is here, because these forums are important for our Army, quite frankly for our joint force, quite frankly for our allies. And I look forward to an absolutely great week. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Lieutenant General Bob Shea back to the stage to formally thank General Morrison on behalf of AFCEA and our audience. General Shea.
General Morrison, being a Patriots fan, I can help you with that question. But seriously, thank you for setting the tenor, and as always, General Morrison, your candor is certainly appreciated, and I think it gives us some of the insights that we need going forward, and you've certainly done a great job setting the stage for the rest of the week and setting us up as we move forward throughout the different events that we're going on. We're going to take an in-place break, short break here, while the team sets up for our next speaker from Three Corps Commander is going to be talking to us, General Funk. So please, in-place break. If you leave here and we start, we're going to have to close the doors because we don't want to interrupt the VTC that will be coming in and hearing General Funk's comments. So thank you very much.